right, so as I said, welcome and thank you for sharing your lunch hour with us today. Our topic, as you know, is workforce development, but it's from the individual's point of view. I'm Rita Riker, president of the board of Focus Greater Syracuse, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our forum and delighted that distinguished members of the Syracuse Community Center Collaborative have agreed to be with us today. Brian Fay, Joan Royal, Maribel Arce, and Cholawan Majak. They will be formally introduced in just a minute. In terms of today's forum, we are scheduled for 1 hour as usual, and we will be recording this session. After being introduced, our panelists will make brief presentations, followed by Q&A, where we'll address as many of your questions as possible. We will begin with the questions that have already been submitted, and it's quite a healthy number, so thank you. Somewhat different than usual, we have scheduled this forum as a Zoom meeting rather than a webinar, so we can see each other. How lovely. We ask that you keep yourself muted during the presentations. If we have time to open up the Q&A to the floor, please either use the chat or signal to be recognized if you have a question. Focus Board member Brian Hoke will be monitoring the Q&A. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our moderator, Focus Board member Brian Fay. Brian is Executive Director of the Syracuse Northeast Community Center, whose mission is to engage, connect, and grow neighbors. Appointed Executive Director in April 2020, he has guided the agency through the pandemic, transformed programming, and engaged in new funding streams and services. Previously, he was the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Syracuse Community Center Collaborative, where he advocated and represented the collaborative across Syracuse and New York State. And before joining the nonprofit world, Brian was an English teacher, inspiring at-risk youth to be self-sufficient and find their own paths toward success. In addition to being a member of the Focus Board, Brian is a 2020 Lead Up CNY graduate and a 2019 Citizen Academy participant. Brian?
Thank you, Rita. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for coming and spending your lunch hour with us. We're really happy to be here and happy to be talking about workforce development from the point of view of our neighbors and all the people that we serve through the community centers that you're going to hear about, the Community Center Collaborative, and our programs, Supported Employment Program, Work Train Program, and Greater Syracuse Works. Unemployment and underemployment are major factors in the entrenched generational poverty in which far too many people in Syracuse have lived for far too long. Employment is a community-wide issue as the city faces, by some counts, 6.3% unemployment. But remember, all the numbers you hear about unemployment or underemployment or even employment represent individuals, people who are struggling to maintain their homes, provide meals for their families, and build a community. These are our neighbors. We represent organizations that have served these people's emergency needs, helped them build self-sufficiency, and grow wealth in our community for decades. Remember, too, that unemployment issues disproportionately affect women and minority populations. This was true before COVID, and it will not end with it. Addressing the needs of these individuals and families requires a comprehensive, holistic, and compassionate response tailored to the unique needs of people living in specific communities. It requires trust. And it demands the collaborative work of organizations willing to embrace a growth mindset of coordination rather than competition. A mindset that you're seeing across the city, across the county, across the region, at all levels, educational, community-based organizations, and in our politics. That's what we're all about. As Executive Director of Syracuse Northeast Community Center, I'm proud to be a member of my favorite network of collaborative organizations. That's the Syracuse Community Center Collaborative. Joan Royal is the Executive Director of Westcott Community Center. She's the person who brought me into this whole nonprofit world, and whether she regrets it or not, we're going to have to wait and see. But she helped found the collaborative, the Syracuse Community Center Collaborative, and she's been involved in workforce development issues, but more importantly, in the issues of individuals and families who are in need and who are looking for someone they can trust for decades. So Joan, what can you tell us about the Syracuse Community Center Collaborative?
Thanks, Brian. So yeah, the Community Center Collaborative consists of 4 community centers located almost in the 4 corners of the city of Syracuse. And totally, we serve about 24,000 individuals. Consists of Syracuse Northeast Community Center, where Brian is, Westcott Community Center, Syracuse Community Connections, which some of you know by their previous name, which was Southwest Community Center, and Huntington Family Center. And you know, we collaborated informally for years and years. You know, prior to this, we got together and we talked about our overall programs and services. We discussed the obstacles we faced in serving the families in our neighborhoods. And we talked a lot about the struggles we faced as individual agencies. We knew we really wanted to work together more formally, and we knew it wouldn't be in the best interest for our own individual agencies and our neighborhoods if we merged. That wasn't something we wanted to think about doing. We are very similar in the fact that we serve our neighborhoods, but we serve different populations in our neighborhoods. We have some different programs, some similar programs, and then our overall organizational structures are slightly different. So in 2019, after a year of a facilitated discussion, we signed a formal MOU. We worked together somewhat under this MOU is somewhat informal, and that's by design. We think about this model as a model to economize. So how can we best work together, sharing funding, staff, resources, and to expand? How do we reach more community members and make a larger impact on those that we serve in the city of Syracuse? So now we're 2 years into this model, and we know more about ourselves as a collaborative. We know more about each other's agencies, about working with each other as executive directors. And we're all very different. We have different approaches to the work we do. And lastly, though, we know that we are committed to the collaborative. So no matter who's at the helm of our individual organizations, whether I'm here next week or not, Westcott Community Center is committed to the collaborative. Our board is committed, like Brian's board is committed. We are all committed to this work. Right now, we're undergoing a 15-month process through the Gifford Foundation called Embracing Disruption. And this process is going to enable nonprofit agencies, we didn't enter this alone, but in our case, the collaborative, to think strategically about sustainability and to assess ourselves in the work we've done in the past couple of years. We know this work will not only strengthen our collaborative, but it's also going to help us strengthen our community and the individuals and families we serve. We all have a common commitment to those we serve. We follow a client-centered approach to all of the work we do. And this is extended to the work that we do in workforce development programs and services. Everything we do is client-centered and client-based. So I'm going to turn this over to Maribel Arce, Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Syracuse Community Center Collaborative, and she's going to discuss this in more detail. Maribel started at the Collaborative right when the pandemic hit. So she's had a rude awakening to everything that all of the work she's done, and she's been incredible. And I'm sorry, I don't have her bio sitting right in front of me, but she's wonderful. So I'm going to turn it over to her right now and let her speak a little bit more.
Hi, everybody. So one of the things that I think is very interesting in the collaborative is we really think that one size does not fit all. And I think the pandemic has shown us that that's true, you know. And the reason why this is important is because in order to build trust with the people you're working with, you have to listen to them and be partners in their journey. And that's what the collaborative members do. When we're talking about workforce development, we really listen to their goals, their needs, and their challenges and strengths, and try to identify what we can do for them to be successful in the path that they're choosing, but also how we can connect them to others. And each person will be different. So a single parent in the middle of the pandemic may need to look for a job that they can work from home, or somebody that's recently unemployed and cannot find jobs in their sector because most of those are closed, may decide to take a career shift and look for different accreditations. Or it may be that somebody decides to launch their own business. And all of these are perfectly valid paths towards employment. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do. We don't want to say, this is what you have to do. We want to give people options. And this multifaceted approach and that's so comprehensive and holistic requires us to partner because we can't do it all. So one good example of what we do as part of our partnerships is the supported employment program, because it's not only the collaborative centers that work on it, but also 2 additional centers. And Chol, who's the director of workforce development of this program, can tell you more about it. Chol?
Thank you, Maribel. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so supported employment program came into being a couple of years ago. To be exact, it was started and initiated 2018, and it did not hit the ground until the beginning of 2019. And with that, our mission, a practical mission, has been to provide a personalized coaching to our community members in job finding. And in doing that, we zero in on trying to remove barriers that prevent them from achieving that desirable job that they are trying to get. And those barriers, there are 4 of them that we focus on. One of them is childcare, transport, and the second is transportation, interpersonal skills, and basic needs. And the way we go about them is mainly in the coaching approach. There are more tangible focus that we have, such as providing basic need, which is through our pantries, as was alluded earlier. Transportation, which we will speak about more later, as a struggle that we go through. Childcare as well. So a lot about what we do is coaching and trying to mitigate those difficulties through coaching. Yes, do we have small amount of resource that we place on those barriers to try to remove them? Yes, we do. It's not a lot, but we do the best we can. And in doing that effort in 2019, when we started this effort, we were able to successfully put our community members to work or to programs that we saw that were appropriate, not of the people that applied to the program. We were able to successfully place 67% of that population either to work, either to job training, educational, and what have you. So we were able to successfully coach them through that and guide them to attain that. And then in 2020, obviously for the obvious reason, we were able to put 46% of the population that came to see us into program, into jobs, and into training. Now with doing that effort, there are 6 community centers, as you heard, with specialists that are currently helping our community members. And what we try to do as a center, beside our daily job effort in trying to mitigate the barriers, is to make sure that we invest in our people that are providing this work to our population. We invest a lot, especially in my job, and I happen to have great bosses in which they understand the need of strengthening people to deliver at their best, and without giving them the right tools, when especially in the nonprofit world, giving them the right tool to do what they do really is important. So we do that. At the same time, we have challenges, and that is we all of you that are aware of nonprofit world, you deal with a lot of turnover, and in our system we deal with about 50% turnover since the inception of the program. And transportation, as you know, is our major barriers as well. So I'll leave it there. I tend to kind of talk too much, and I'll leave it there for questions. Brian?
I'm going to pass it back to Joan to talk about work train a little bit, which is our second program after supported employment.
Sure. So one of the things that we do is we work with Center State CEO to help promote and support the programs of work train initiatives, any of the work train programs. So we have a work train coordinator that works across the Community Center Collaborative that supports training initiatives. And, you know, I'm sure you've all heard of work train initiatives. I'm guessing that that's fairly familiar for most of you. But Center State approaches these initiatives by assisting businesses in recruiting, training, retaining skilled workers, while also working with community partners like us to assist residents with accessible training opportunities. So some of them have been like Health Train, Pro Train, and other programs. They work also with SUNY EOC, who does some of their trainings. And we work collectively and collaboratively to support this work. And currently, there's a new program that's starting, I'm hoping that you've heard of. It's called the Pathways to Apprenticeship Program. And this training initiative is going to focus on helping women, people of color, and veterans gain access to the building trades. And this is through an 11-week paid program designed to prepare a local workforce for a significant number of construction jobs that will be coming down the pike, you know, due to anticipated federal, state, and local infrastructure funding, like the I-81 project. This is one of the first paid training programs that that Center State Work Train initiatives have been able to do. So this is a good thing to help people get paid while they're being trained. Our work train coordinator, Tanya Graham, works collectively with all of the potential participants. So she helps recruit and register people in the program. And this may mean helping them obtain the documentation they need and IDs, and help them find childcare while they're in the training programs, help them find transportation to the training programs. She also supports them with case management services during their time of training. You know, we know that people have a lot of obstacles to being able to get themselves from point A to point B. And her job is to make sure she supports them throughout that program, which is really a critical thing. And then when they're completed with the program, for some of the programs, she will then turn them back to one of the supported employment specialists who will help them work on their resume, help them with interview strategies, help them feel comfortable actually looking for a job. Some of the positions or some of the trainings, like the Pathways to Apprenticeship, is working directly with local unions. So they're kind of have a pathway to a position, but sometimes not. And it's her job to assist all of the people that register in these programs from enrollment to completion, and then turn it over to specialists for employment. And I think that works really well for us. And that's it on that program.
Thanks, Joan. And sure. You've heard Joan talk about how we're working together across 4 community centers with a major player like Center State, and Joel describing how 6 community centers are working on an Onondaga County funded program to work with individuals. Those are where we're working directly with individuals. And Maribel is about to tell us a little bit about how we are trying to build a situation in which more players in Syracuse are able to cooperatively work together on this issue. So Maribel.
Thank you. So since 1999, Greater Syracuse Works has leveraged about $10 million in workforce development grants for Syracuse. And June last year, the collaborative took on the challenge of assuming the leadership of Greater Syracuse Works, and in conjunction with Peace, they've reinvigorated its convening power. Right now, GSW is a network of 26 organizations, and we work together to advance equitable and dignified work for individuals across Greater Syracuse. And we do this through problem solving, through expertise, and through collaboration. And so we have Greater Syracuse Works has 2 different types of meetings. The first ones are monthly direct service meetings, and this is where people that are serving clients directly, like frontline staff, program managers, and workforce development directors, participate to share experiences, share program information, and we also troubleshoot some issues that we may be finding that our clients have, that we can maybe solve through partnerships. And then whatever information comes up during the monthly meetings, we use this to inform our quarterly leadership meetings. And in those, we have executive directors participating to think about what are lessons, best lessons learned and best practices when we're looking at opportunities to create workforce development programs, and also what are problems in the system that we can solve together. So it's GSW.
Thank you, Maribel. So one of the problems I had when I came into nonprofit work was dealing with all the TLAs, the 3-letter acronyms. I could never keep up with that and the numbers of different programs that are going on. That was always a challenge for me. And putting this together, one of the challenges was we're telling you a lot of different things. We've told you about the Syracuse Community Center Collaborative. We've talked about the supported employment program, work train program, and now Greater Syracuse Works. They all combine in what I like to think of as a community center model. And the community center model is simply based on what do individuals in our specific communities need. Syracuse is a small city, but it's a network of smaller communities. The community centers are placed where they know the people with whom they're working, they're trusted by them, and we develop that model through all that we do. We aren't here to say that's the only way to do workforce development. In fact, we count on our partners who work with large corporations and employers. We count on the people who are in politics at the county level, the city level, state, and even federal. And at the federal level, we've got a unique opportunity with the American Jobs Plan that's come down. And we have a moment where we really need to jump into this. And luckily, we are prepared to do this work. We have been doing this work for a long time. That doesn't mean we don't have more to learn, but that's what we're here to do. One of the best ways that we learn to serve better is by listening to what the community is telling us and answering difficult questions that they might want to ask of us. And so that's what we want to go to next, is your questions, and hopefully give you answers that both inform you and inform what we do next. Thank you all for listening. And I think Brian is going to lead us with some questions now.
Hey, everybody, I'm Brian Hoke. Excuse me, I'm a board member here at Focus. And thanks, as was already expressed, but I'll add mine, to the panelists for being here today and sharing your thoughts. So we had quite a few questions come in from folks already, but certainly if you who've joined us here today have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them as well. Selfishly, sitting in this chair, I'll ask a question from myself first before I get to some of the other ones. I served on a board, I chaired a board of an organization that merged with another organization, a formal merger. And we certainly during that process looked at other ways of collaboration other than an outright formal connectedness. I'm curious I'm more curious about the process perhaps, even though, appropriately you've talked a lot about how you serve individuals. Can you say anything about other ways in which you looked, other structures you perhaps considered apart from the one that you ended up choosing, which seems to have worked for you? But I'm just curious if there was anything else that came up that you said, no, this isn't right for us.
I'll take that. So I think all along, many people said, well, why don't you just think about merging? Why not? You could have the 4 centers could still be in the neighborhoods, and one center could be, in charge of everything else, and you could maybe help cut costs that way or do things like that. And honestly, we really truly believe that model was not the right model for us. We want very strongly to be individual organizations, and we want to show the community that you can work together formally and yet keep your own identity and keep the people in your neighborhoods feeling comfortable because you've been their trusted messenger and their trusted go-to place for years. We just really felt strongly that the best way to work together was to share funding, share ideas, spread as much work throughout the community as we could, filling gaps that we might have had between the 4 centers, and share some staff. And that for us really was the model we decided it had to be. Honestly, we really didn't consider strongly another model. It wasn't something, it was just not something we wanted to do. So, and it's worked this way.
You certainly made a case for it even before my question during, various members of the panel here mentioned how you serve the unique needs of the folks in your populations. Seems like the best of both worlds, that you are able to work together, but yet maintain some unique autonomy and serve the people you serve as your own thing.
Yeah, and let's be really transparent about it too. We don't always agree on things. There's a fair amount of discussion and debate on how we approach anything we do. But with that comes wonderful perspectives of experienced executive directors and staff and boards. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. It certainly keeps you on your toes, and that's a good thing. That's what we want.
That's great. Anybody else on that?
I would say the only thing is that we extend that model to Greater Syracuse Works. And we also knew that asking people to come together to merge to work on workforce development was not going to work as well as saying, okay, let's cooperate. We can represent a larger population together in collaboration. But the other thing to keep in mind too is that all of the centers and all of the organizations, even in GSW, provide a host of different services that are not duplicated at each center. Even just looking at Westcott and Northeast here on this call, Westcott serves many more older adults, whereas Northeast serves many more new American and refugee. And being able to really focus and specialize, but also have that background of collaboration and connection with each other is crucial. And it's the thing that I think in some ways, if people have been in Syracuse for a long time, that has been historically a problem, but in the recent history has become a great strength. People are really diving into this with both feet. And there's some great leadership around that throughout the city.
That's great. Well, nice to hear. We had quite a few questions, excuse me, about transportation. Joel, you mentioned it as one of the barriers folks face. Can you all talk a little bit more about what some of the challenges are perhaps, and some of the ways either you or through partners or employers or other entities are addressing that? Anybody, Joel, I mean, certainly you, but anybody who would like to chime in.
Well, I would like Joan, because I think Joan has a great perspective on this, and I'll pick up after that.
Yeah. So this is, for me, it's a lot of personal belief and opinion, but being around the nonprofit sector for a very, very long time, obviously transportation plays a critical role in being able to get people to work. It truly does. And although we've worked hard at trying to mitigate some of these challenges, I know Centro has expanded their bus routes, and there's a service provider like Providence Services that will pick people up in groups and take them to work. But we struggle beyond that. I mean, the bottom line is for transportation is that mass transit or even large group transit doesn't work for everyone, and certainly doesn't work for every position out there. It just can't. For example, the new program through Center State where we're training people for construction jobs. Well, these jobs are in different places at different times. You're not always being transported to the same exact location at the same exact time. They can be all over. And so what I feel strongly about is that we need to work toward paying people enough money so that they can make their own way into getting a vehicle for themselves. We are not like New York City. We don't really have the graphic density to support full, mass transit. A lot of the jobs are not right in the middle of the city. We need to be able to help people work toward being able to get a vehicle. And in the meantime, we need to work on solutions like even, group sharing of transportation for employees that are going to the same location. But these are huge problems that are not going to be solved easily overnight. And Chol, I know you have a little bit more perspective on that.
Thanks, Joan.
Yes, and thank you, Joan. Yes, Brian, and everybody. I'd let Joan go first because this program, especially the supported employment program, came out from folks like Joan and many other EDs. And I think the vision behind that is was influenced by what you just heard. And as a community, it matters effort that we put in to try to reduce the impact of lack of transportation are there, but there's so much we can do. And here at community centers and the grassroots, we continue to see the impact of lack of transportation. And when you speak about lack of transportation, and considering that the city is one of the poorest cities in America, it kind of relate to that, because if people can't get to North Syracuse to find that job that they can feed their family, it become a problem, right? Become a huge issue. And as a community, we try to do the best we can, but at the same time, it does not erase the fact that transportation is a problem. And we work with partners, as Joan said, Providence Services. We work with folks like Cooperative Federal to try to figure out, to get the person to that stage where they are self-empowered. You see, if you can empower the person to do for themselves, that is the goal. That is the goal. And that's where we strive. Yes, it's central there. Yes. But the best position where a person can be is where they have option for themselves. And that's the goal we are trying to get to. Have we achieved it? No.
Gotcha. Thank you. Brian or Maribel, anything on that? Okay, very good. I think several of you in your remarks mentioned projects like the I-81 project. We certainly had a few questions about the connection. I know you mentioned a little bit, but if you could talk a little more about perhaps in particular, what is the formal connection with what I'm sure is still an evolving sort of effort. So we don't know everything about it, but curious what more you could say about some of the workforce development efforts that would lead folks to perhaps work on something like the I-81 project.
Maribel, do you want to take that, or should I? I don't want to leave you out.
So we have been participating in Syracuse Surge meetings and I-81 project meetings. So our voice is there, and we speak from the voice of the community in these meetings. But there's a lot of structural issues that will need to be addressed as we're going forward. And I don't know if, we see our role. It's very important to ask questions as we're doing these, and to make sure that we have our neighbor's voice in it as much as possible.
And I would add that Greater Syracuse Works is a particularly good example of how we're dealing with this. We have those two levels of meetings. We have direct service personnel who are working with individuals, and they come to these meetings and they raise issues that bubble up to the leadership level rather than the leadership dictating what people need. We're trying to listen. And so most of those organizations are in one way or another diving into the I-81 project. And as you said, Brian, we still don't know what that looks like, but there's all sorts of initiatives. And again, I see where people are trying to think ahead rather than plug in at the last minute. And so we've got all sorts of organizations throughout Greater Syracuse Works that are doing this. The Supported Employment Program has long been involved in getting people ready to be able to do those jobs. And of course, WorkTrain is directly training people for all sorts of jobs, including construction and this new apprenticeship program. So, it's a matter of trying to lay groundwork for this. And now, again, with the federal money that is coming and the decisions that are being made at a little more rapid pace, we've got opportunity here to serve and represent what our individual clients need by knowing what the community needs.
Gotcha. Other than that money just being money to fund programs, can you say a little bit more about what that federal money might mean, what difference you all could make given that funding in a year, 2 years, 3 years? I'm just curious about it, not knowing a whole lot about it myself. Anybody?
Go ahead, John. If you want.
I'm just going to jump in and say that's a tough one. And I'm not going to pretend to know all the answers to that, because I absolutely don't. That's a really big question. I think moving forward, members of Greater Syracuse Works would do really well to receive some of this funding so that they can work collaboratively with other partners and really think about this work that benefits all of the clients or the clients that are interested that they serve. But yeah, no, and I think we're all preparing for something that we don't yet know exactly how much or exactly who all of the players are. Clearly, the city of Syracuse and Onondaga County and Center State and us, we're ready, but we don't yet know exactly how much and what we're ready for. So we're working to try to get to ourselves to a place where we can respond, but I'm not going to pretend to know all of what that response is going to be. I think collectively, we really want to make sure that we're helping our clients be able to do this work and get ready to do the work. I mean, I think that's the bottom line for us.
And I think just piggybacking on what Joan is saying, I think one of the things that we're doing that's great with Greater Syracuse is we're talking about what are the things that in traditional workforce development programs were not considered. So for example, when we're talking about, I've seen the chat and there's a lot of comments also about childcare and female workforce participation. It's key. We can keep on, I did an impact study before I worked in the collaborative in 2017. The two major barriers to employment were childcare and transportation. And we're in 2021 and they're still the two main barriers. So these are huge structural issues that no center alone or no agency alone can take on, not even Centro. But together, I think we can find ways to make a solution that's creative. And the interesting thing is when you have, develop people that work with people every day, talking about how they can partner to find everyday solutions. And then when you have executive directors talking about what are the assets that each institution brings, but what are the challenges they're finding and seeing how they can partner to collaborate and make things better. I think we can start working towards bringing a solution that isn't just one center thinking of what they can do, but what we can all do together.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And also, but I would also say bringing in other partners. One partner that we need to mention is Peace Incorporated is part of Greater Syracuse Works. And one of their things I'm looking at the chat about childcare availability and also that model of childcare workers. They've done some incredible training in terms of helping people start childcare businesses in their own home. And that's the kind of approach that I keep looking at, where we're not just looking at, okay, there's a problem, people can't go to work because their kids need childcare. It's saying, wait a minute, there's also people who need work doing this and need to be paid well for that, but also can become entrepreneurs and community leaders. So rather than just, helping someone find a job at a daycare center, part of what Joel always talks to me about is we don't just find people jobs, we find people careers. And you're building a means for people to not just develop sustainability, but also just to live a better life. And so when you look at the problems, so an I-81 is another issue where, we're going to tear down a highway, but we all know that's spiderwebbed with 50 other issues that are all intriguing. And it's going to take, not to quote the famous saying, but it's going to take the entire city or the village to figure out all these different things. What we try to do is help be a network for that village, as well as providers of services directly. And so that's where we're trying to find that sweet spot where we can integrate with policy and actual practice on the ground. And that's where we're talking.
And I'm just going to add in there that, like Childcare Solutions is also a member of Greater Syracuse Works. If you look at the list of the people that have partnered with Greater Syracuse Works, you'll see that they are very different organizations. So it will take all of these different organizations to come up with solutions to all of the problems that we're going to face to get an appropriate workforce for all of these projects. So I welcome you to take a look at the website and to look at the partners that are all in Greater Syracuse Works.
Very good. Thank you. We had quite a few questions. I'm sorry, Brian, did I cut you off? Okay. We had quite a few questions from folks about the mechanics of it. How would someone looking for a job, looking for a career, looking to change what they do, mechanically, how does one come across programs? How would somebody find a job?
Take that. Often, our approach here is that let's take service to the people, right? Let's take service to the people. Instead of letting people search for us, let's take those services to them and give them that liberty to make a choice whether it's for them or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that model is what it's exemplified here, right? By bringing employment to community centers. Our understanding here is that we are a one-stop shop for everything. Everyone that comes to our center is looking for all kind of stuff, right? So it made sense to also bring opportunities that give people a chance to go to work and feed their family and be part of this. It made sense to do that. Now, here's a supported employment program. Here's what we do. Because we have pantries here in most of our centers, we make sure that when people are coming to look for basic needs, that we present them the information. We make ourselves visible. This is what we do. In addition to what you're looking for, here is additional information. Here's additional help if you want, if you are ready for that. And as I always said, when people come to us, we're not just here to give them jobs. We are looking for a long term for them, to be able to get them to a pathway where they can continuously provide for their family. So that we, through our assessment, we look at different tiers of what this person needs, right? So in doing that, in making sure that information are available to them through our community centers, through supported employment program, we do what we call canvassing, and that is we hit neighborhood. For example, we have a 7 team members, including myself. What we will do is we print flyers and we go into the nearby neighborhood with the power of 7 people, and we knock on door, making sure, telling people that you're not alone. Here's option for you. If finding job is your goal, if finding other program or any other help that you need, we can help you get there. We can coach you get there. That is one of the few ways that we make sure that people are aware of what we do and able to help them get to work.
Wow, that's impressive. Thank you. Anybody else want to? Sorry, please.
I'll just jump in really quickly and say, we're all aware of that digital divide. So, we can give everybody our web address, we can post on our Facebook page, and that doesn't necessarily affect change in many of the people we serve's lives. So the best way that we know to reach people is to get out there and do that work and canvas, like Joel said. It's really important that our specialists don't sit behind their desks. They're out. I very seldom see mine. So they're out in the neighborhoods. They're out in the community doing the work that they know they need to be done. And as far as our partners and other people, we have that stuff listed on our Greater Syracuse Works website. And so people that are working at other organizations can spread the word. But when you're talking about individuals and families, the internet isn't necessarily the place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like a 7-person team going out into the community is very much so. That's great. Yeah. Sorry, Brian.
That's okay. And the other thing is that people who are facing employment issues are not only facing employment issues. So they're coming to the centers already because we provide basic needs service. We provide older adult services. We provide health connections, neighborhood advisor, all sorts of programs, as Joel called it, the one-stop shop. That's what we're really trying to be, is when someone's in need, they should come knock on our door or come through our door, and we will find a way to work with them. As soon as anyone comes in to any of our centers, we're performing an assessment. There's, our intake form, and there's also a life needs assessment that the Community Foundation started. These things are tools that allow us to see the broader picture and create a holistic approach to addressing their life situation. So, your initial question is, how do people connect with us? They connect with us because they're already connecting with us beyond just what's Joel and his team are going out and finding. Gotcha.
We certainly have more questions submitted in advance, but given that we have this slightly different format, would anybody who is in the audience like to ask a question live? If so, you could put a note in the chat, unmute yourself. It's a small D democratic kind of layout here.
I think John Crudy's had his hands up for most of the session. John?
Oh, okay, I missed that, but John, go ahead. Rita, I think we don't need to do anything to allow folks to talk, right?
Correct. They just have to unmute themselves.
Yeah. John, go ahead, please.
John, you need to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry. There. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can hear me now? I'm sorry. Yeah. I didn't realize it was
Yeah.
muted. Yeah.
Thanks for jumping
Not
on.
the first time in my life. Not the first time in my life. I used to work for CNY Works. I was a career counselor. What role do they have now as locating good careers and jobs for people? That's my question.
Anybody?
I'm sorry, I didn't get it. What was the question? I kind of blinked out a little bit.
Wait a minute, I'll repeat it.
Yeah.
I used to work for CNY Works. I was a career counselor. What role does CNY Works have now in career pathing and job finding?
CNY Works. I don't know much about.
Yeah, CNY Works is a separate organization that, from what we're working with, we have had some interaction with them and cooperation with them, but I don't know if they are formally members of Greater Syracuse Works yet. I don't believe so. And but Joan, you started to say something.
No, I was just going to say that exact same thing. I know CMI Works does a really good job of helping folks get from point A to point B, but we are not yet formally or informally collaborating with them. And but I know that they've got great partnerships with some people in the community and that they do a really good job at the work they do.
And I just want to add that we have also in the past partner with them. I think it's called metrics training.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they do,
Took
man.
advantage of that, and it was very, very beneficial for all of us. So that's at the side of supporting employment program. They have been good to us in that aspect.
Well, they have a summer work youth program. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am. At least, yeah. So yes, they do. They do have that. And I actually was part of, so Central State CEO also had a task force during the pandemic, and we really worked very closely with CNY Works at those times. And the result of that work was a community conversation study that showed you worked with Peace and doing with Central State CEO. So we have worked with them. And we still do. It's just not necessarily the formal way.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. I see somebody else thanks, John, for your question. Somebody else put their hand up, but I only see a hand and not a name.
Mark Jackson.
Oh, okay, great. Mark, do you want to ask? Maybe we have time for one or two more, please.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Let me get my hand down. Thank you. Okay. Hi, folks. This is, I think, related. I know it's a related question, perhaps the other side of the equation, and I can't help but think about it. I do it a lot. I wonder if, every time I listen to and work on workforce development, I'll call it self-improvement things, I think, where's the rest of the equation? And why are we always working on this? Always. I'm sure we always will need to, but would we perhaps be a little bit more effective if, the other side of the equation, that is to say the employers, the corporate cultures, those that are or would be doing the hiring, got some work done on them as well. And I know easier said than done. And I don't mean what I'm saying as a criticism to this process at all. Because this is part of the equation. But we all were in the 8th grade once. If you only had half the equation, are you ever going to get the thing right?
No.
And is that the heavy lift? Is that the other side of the heavy lift that we're always dancing around, the king with no clothes that we act like is not there? And you can consider it rhetorical and academic if you like for purposes of this meeting.
Yeah.
Because we're out of time, and I get that you have to focus on what you can control. But I can't help but ask that question, and think about it and share it with you all, because this is an august audience, and perhaps some of you can do something with the thought and make it mean something sometime in the future.
Mark, we agree with you, and Center State is one of our partners in Greater Syracuse Works and in our programs, but we see that it's important to speak with employers. So we have been meeting with employers additionally and talking to them to make sure, because we see it also that exactly what you say, a lot of the new programs are focused on what employers need, but then they're not looking at what people need. And I think we have to find an intersection in both. So I think that's part of the process that's going to be taking place in the future and is taking place right now as we keep going forward.
Yeah, and
Brian,
Check OCC. Check OCC. They have training linked directly to employers. Check OCC out.
Yes, they do.
Yes.
And I think, Mark, to your point that, again, it is a larger issue and that there's all sorts of moving pieces, and your equation metaphor is perfect. Trying to put all the pieces together is, we're not going to be able to do that, but we still should, we better be trying to do that. And one of the things that we often talk about is helping employers understand that making an investment in employees who may not be the typical employees that they're used to seeing pays a huge dividend. Now, I understand the other side of that, which is, as an employer, I need to get somebody doing that work right now. And I can't invest a ton of time in that. And that's why we're looking at trying to be better partners with employers. I think Joel would be able to regale you for the next hour or so with employers with whom he's really developed those kind of connections and been able to talk with and work with them, because they are our partners. And there's no workforce development without employers. And if we're not paying attention to that, then we're not really going to get very far.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to add a little bit to what the team has said here. Yes, we understand that, collaboration is the relationship, right? And for us to be able to present our best foot forward in terms of presenting reliable employees to employers, it requires that we do our work, right? And you're right, Mark, it's a two-way in which when we prepare these community members of ours, and we are trying to present them into the workforce, there has to be a reception of these individuals. Otherwise, the effort doesn't really go across or cross to the finish line. So you're right. You one foot can be faster than the other. Otherwise, this walking can't go right? So as we push through, we try to get our people ready for the workforce. Employers have to also come out to us and say, you know what, I understand. I'm willing to help the community, because that's employers that we have got, Mark, people that understand that we are dealing with multi-faceted issue here. It's not just readiness. There's more to it. And it takes an employer that is very empathetic and understand the nature and willing to take the ride. So it is a two-way. It's definitely a two-way.
At the risk of cutting off a good discussion, I know we're close to the end of time, so I'll turn it back to Rita, if I may. But thank you, everybody, for your remarks.
Yes, this has been really, really informative. I want to thank our panelists, Brian, Joan, Maribel, and Joel. I think it's been wonderful. You've clearly had some audience participation here. So thank you. We have recorded today's session, and so it will be placed on our website, the Focus website, within the day or so. Depends on when Brian Hoke gets to it. So we're a very volunteer-driven organization here. But the focussyracuse.org is our website. You can definitely make a donation there, and we would be very appreciative of that. And again, thank you all for being here, and we hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks much.
Thank you.
You.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.